Hello, fellow grave crawlers, and welcome to ZTV Pitches. I am Paiper Zombee, your host with you as always. And on today's episode, I'll be pitching to you 1031-2. 1031-2 is the sequel to 1031, a pitch that originally debuted all the way back in 2013 on the original ZTV station. I debuted it here on the new station in 2019, and with it, continued what I call the Urban Tales series. The objective of the series is to take the big three horror icons of the 1980s, so that's Michael, Freddy, and Jason, and tell those stories from the perspective of an African American. Now, why would I want to do this? Because I feel like the shift in perspective allows for these stories to be told in a different way while still allowing them to stay true to the source. For 1031, I took a look at John Carpenter's original Halloween and Rob Zombie's Halloween and said, now this is what these stories look like from a Caucasian American's perspective. These are their concerns, their fears, and in the case of Rob Zombie's Halloween, their stereotypes. How would these same things look in African American society? How would something like it even come together and happen in the first place? And how would an African American family handle the experience? I know it sounds trivial, but if you haven't already, check out 1031 or Black Friday and Black Friday Part 2, and you'll see just how much of a difference it makes. 1031-2 picks up after the events of 1031 and uses the 2019 re-release date for timing. So if you're all ready, let's gather around the campfire and dive into 1031-2. 1031-2 picks up 5 years after the events of 1031. We find out that for all 5 of these years, Michael Myers has been housed at Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he has been in a coma ever since his return. But that all changes on an ordinary day in the month of July, when the sleeper wakes. Word of Michael's awakening quickly reaches Sam Loomis, who is still working at Smith's Grove and is still Michael's primary doctor. When Sam goes to see Michael, he gets quite a few surprises. He hears Michael's voice for the first time since meeting him. He sees something other than the black emptiness in his eyes. And he sees Michael show emotion. But the biggest surprise is that Sam finds himself not talking to the man responsible for carving a murderous path through Haddonfield. He finds himself talking to the 10-year-old boy that the man was on the Halloween night he committed his first murders. Michael has no memory of the years that have passed since that night. No memory of the things he's done. For him, he fell asleep at the table in the kitchen at home as a kid, then woke up as a grown man at Smith's Grove. And for us, the audience, even we see Michael as a 10-year-old boy rather than the grown man that he is. It takes Sam a few more days of observation and visits with Michael before he's convinced that Michael's state of mind is not a trick and not some form of regression. With the help of a few colleagues, Sam reaches a conclusion about Michael's condition. It's dissociative identity disorder. On that Halloween night when he was 10, Michael's mind had snapped under all the abuse it had taken. And that was the perfect recipe to create an alter personality. One that had assumed control on that Halloween night and had remained in control until the recent awakening. Sam figures that the bullet refracting off of Michael's skull, which had led to his coma in the first place, had been enough to cause the alter to lose control. But the question was, had the alter gone dormant, which was as close to death as an alter could get, or had it only gone passive? All of this leads to Sam changing his approach when it comes to Michael. He conducts business with him as if he were dealing with an actual 10-year-old. The approach goes over well, but leads to Michael asking about his family and why he's in Smith's Grove. Sam doesn't think that Michael is mentally ready to handle those answers, and doesn't want to risk any triggers that could bring about the alter. So he suggests that they focus on getting Michael readjusted to life first. And that's not an easy task. The majority of the staff at Smith's Grove knows about Michael and the things he's done, and they don't have nice feelings for him at all. But Michael having DID changed things. Because the two personalities within him were their own separate selves, one couldn't be blamed for the other's actions. But because both of those personalities occupied the same body, it made it hard to look at Michael and not see the monster. It's not until the month of September that Sam feels that Michael is ready to know the truth about his family and why he's in Smith's Grove. Though the truth is hard for Michael to hear, Sam is there to support him. And as the rest of September passes and October arrives, the two of them form a bond. Sam feels like he's getting a second chance to help Michael. Had he known in the beginning that Michael had DID, the first time would have gone different. He wants to do everything in his power to make sure that the altar never shows its ghostly white face again, and that Michael still has a chance at a life. For Michael, he's also about his altar, which he's named the Boogeyman, never showing its face again. If that happened, and after enough time had passed, Michael would have the chance to see what remained of his family again, including his little sister, Lori. And he wanted that more than he wanted anything else in the world. During the first week of October, Michael sees something unexpected when he looks out of the window to take in the sight it provides. A figure standing way down the road on the other side of the exit gate. Dismissing it as a guard, Michael changes his mind a while later when he realizes that the figure is clearly standing but hasn't moved an inch. Michael calls someone over so that he can point out the oddity to them. But by the time the person comes over to look, the figure at the gate is gone. During the second week of October, while in transit and looking out at the yard, Michael sees the figure again. This time, it's close enough for him to see it better. And what he sees terrifies him. But by the time he's able to get attention and point it out, the figure is gone. Michael tells Sam about the yard and gate sightings the moment they meet. And Sam is immediately concerned, because the sight that Michael saw both times was the Boogeyman. Sam explains to a questioning and confused Michael that what he saw was a projection of his mind, a hallucination. It wasn't real and could happen as his mind continued to heal. But Sam doesn't share the full story just yet. The hallucinations could also be a sign that the Boogeyman had not gone dormant, but had instead gone passive. And if that was true, then there was the question of if the Boogeyman would continue to remain passive. In order to help Michael steal his mind and get a better idea of whether the Boogeyman is dormant or passive, Sam teaches Michael a technique he can use should he see the Boogeyman. He's to close his eyes and count backwards from 5 while remembering that what he's seeing isn't real. When he opens his eyes, the Boogeyman will be gone. Michael does exactly that the next time he sees the Boogeyman later that week while looking out of a different window. This time, the Boogeyman is closer, standing near the bushes of the entrance to the building. And like Sam said, the Boogeyman is gone when Michael opens his eyes. When Michael sees the Boogeyman again during the third week of October, inside the building this time, the technique works again. Given this, Sam begins to lean more towards the events being exactly that, hallucinations. Because if the boogeyman was passive, then the technique wouldn't work. On the final week of October, on Halloween night, Michael sees the boogeyman again while he's in the restroom brushing his teeth. Without concern, he uses the tried and true technique on the boogeyman. But when he opens his eyes, he's surprised to see that the boogeyman is still there. Michael tries the technique again, but when he opens his eyes again, the boogeyman is still there. Seeing that the technique isn't working, Michael decides to stand his ground and face the boogeyman. He tells the boogeyman that he never asked for him and doesn't need him. The boogeyman kills people, even family, and he's ruined Michael's life forever. Michael asserts that his body is his, and he's not sharing it with the boogeyman or giving it up to him ever again. The boogeyman responds to all of this with silence before he moves in on Michael and grabs him by the throat. Michael can feel the boogeyman's grip against his neck, can feel as the boogeyman lifts him up off the ground so that his feet are no longer touching it. It lets him know that this is no hallucination. Somehow, this is real. Michael is able to land a solid kick against the boogeyman's chest, which gets him free from the boogeyman's choking grip. Not knowing what else to do, Michael flees through the facility in an attempt to make it to Sam's office. The boogeyman pursues and attempts to recapture Michael. But Michael is pretty crafty and is able to evade and stay a step ahead of the boogeyman. The worst, however, comes when Michael tries to get help from all of the people he comes across. The boogeyman is always able to get out of sight just before the people see him, and is always able to get the jump and brutally take each one of them down. Michael finally makes it to where Sam's office is located and sees Sam as he steps out of his office. The boogeyman doesn't make an attempt to hide this time and continues to pursue Michael in the presence of Sam. Armed security arrives on the scene via the fire exit and immediately takes aim at the boogeyman. When the boogeyman shows no signs of slowing after being told repeatedly to freeze, the first shot is fired. It strikes the boogeyman in the chest and staggers him. But after a few moments, the boogeyman seems to shrug it off and keep moving. The second shot is fired, hitting on the right side of the first. This takes the boogeyman down to his knees in pain. But after another few moments, he attempts to get to his feet again and continue the chase. That's when the third shot is fired, and it's lethal. It tears through the boogeyman's heart. This puts the boogeyman down on his back. But he's not the only one. Michael feels the impact of the bullet through his own chest and heart. And when he looks down, he realizes that he's bleeding from that exact spot. As Michael falls down to the floor himself, the answer of what's happened suddenly comes to him. The boogeyman had never been dormant. He'd been passive. And at some point, the roles had been reversed. The boogeyman had shoved Michael out of the driver's seat and had taken control just like he'd done before, without Michael even knowing. But this time, his emergence hadn't put Michael to sleep. Michael was wide awake and aware. Thus, he had become the projection instead of the projectee, and the boogeyman was trying to get him in order to put him back to sleep again. Security and Sam approached Michael's down body, with everyone wondering how in the world Michael found another mask that looked similar to the one that he wore 5 years ago. Sam and security pin Michael's arms as Sam stoops down to remove the mask. But instead of being greeted by the black, empty eyes and emotionless face of the boogeyman, Sam sees Michael as he struggles to breathe. Michael smiles at Sam and through choking breaths tells him, "We did it, Dr. Loomis. We got him. The boogeyman is dead." Michael takes a few more choking breaths before his breathing shallows out and finally ceases. Sam calls to Michael a few times before he begins trying to resuscitate him. The medics arrive and take over from there. But unfortunately, Michael has already passed on. A few days later, Sam is at home sitting in his backyard at the fire pit. In the fire pit is wood, fuel, and the infernal mask that the boogeyman was wearing. Sam stares at the mask for a long moment before he speaks. "I'm sorry, Michael. I was given a second chance, and I still couldn't save you from him. You were a good boy who deserved to have a future ahead of him instead of having it stolen away by that monster." Sam then takes out a box of matches, takes one out, and lights it. Before he drops it into the fire pit, he concludes, "We got you, you bastard. You will trouble this boy, his family, and this world no more." Sam drops the match, which ignites the fire pit. And it's as the mask is burning and melting within the inferno that 1031-2 comes to a close. And that, fellow grave crawlers, is 1031-2. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you like the direction that the story went in. Out of the big three 80s horror icons, Michael is the only one whose story has been retconned the most. Originally, it was Druids. Yes, Druids. They control Haddonfield, Smith's Grove, and possibly other towns. One of the entities that the Druids believed in was called Thorn, and in order to appease him, a child from each of the Druid groups was chosen to bear the mark of Thorn. On Halloween night, when the constellation of Thorn, which looked just like the mark, appeared in the sky, Thorn would take possession of the child and imbue them with superhuman power. It would also murder everyone in that child's family and anyone who stood in the way of that. This was done in order to keep Thorn from just randomly possessing someone and killing indiscriminately. But by the time H20, aka Halloween 7, came along, it wrote out Halloweens 4, 5, and 6, which established the Druid storyline, and basically said that Michael does what he does because he's evil incarnate. This same idea was kept in 2018 when John Carpenter returned to the series, but this time he wrote out every Halloween except for the first one, and wrote out that Michael and Laurie were siblings. I've personally never been a fan of the "he's evil incarnate and that's why he does what he does" explanation when it comes to Michael Myers. Like, that might have worked in the 70s when people didn't know as much about psychological issues as they do now. We know that people aren't just born screwed up and evil. That comes from somewhere. And we don't even need to go supernatural for that somewhere, because natural is scary enough. That's what I presented in 1031 and wanted to continue in 1031-2. I mean, seriously, wouldn't it be scary to find out that you basically have a whole other person who just happens to be a killer living inside of you? Yeah, I wouldn't be paranoid as hell at all. I also wanted us to be able to see Michael in a way that we've never seen him before. I wanted the audience to feel for Michael and to actually root for him. But I didn't want to take away the significance of the boogeyman / the shape. He's still the villain, but in a way we've never seen before. I also wanted us to be able to see Sam Loomis in a different light. We've already seen him as the hardened doctor in the original series, and as the money grubber famaholic in Rob Zombie's version. I wanted us to have a Sam that was hardened, but remorseful about not being able to reach Michael and save him as a child. I wanted to explore what Sam might do if he ever got that second chance. I also wanted to have the epic hospital chase, which was the signature of John Carpenter's Halloween 2, and even had a guest spot in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, but presented in a different way. And I wanted the focus to be different. We've already seen the Michael returns to stalk Laurie storyline 7 times already. It was time for something new. So thank you all, fellow grave crawlers, for checking this pitch out. If you have any questions, want to let me know how I did, please feel free to post. Just remember to keep it constructive if you're offering criticism. And if you give this a thumbs down, please take a moment to tell me why. I can't become better if I don't know what wasn't like. Alright. I am Paiper.